Hello and welcome to Series 6, Episode 1 of In Suspense. We've made it to Series 6, yay! I am Laura North and my co-host is the lovely Leslie Cara. Hello, Leslie.
A very croaky Leslie Cara.
Croaky. We'll get to that in a second. So in our final episode of Series 5, we had the lovely Phoebe Morgan, author of The Wild Girls and editorial director of HarperCollins. And she came on speaking to us about location and where we're going with exotic thrillers, as well as some great insights into the editorial process. So she really shared a lot. So if you haven't listened, it's well worth a listen. Today, I think hopefully you're all as excited as we are to talk about sex. So the topic is sex in thrillers. How much is too much? So I'm just going to be like this the whole time, hiding behind the paper. So that's it. But before we talk about the topic, Leslie, how are you feeling after the dreaded COVID?
Yeah.
And you're still struggling, actually, aren't you? It's not
I am
really
a bit.
over.
I'm much better now. I mean, yesterday and today are my best days so far. So I think I'm turning the corner. But I have had a really rough week. The first half of last week I was so poorly and the cough was so painful. Even sneezing was just really hurt, and all my stomach muscles were hurting as well because of the strain of coughing. It's probably one of the worst things I've had in terms of cold symptoms. I did have pleurisy a few years ago. It was similar to that in a way, the chest pain.
Yeah.
But no, it's been really miserable, and I've been a bit low because you always get low, don't you, when you're poorly? And
yeah,
because I couldn't get on with doing all the things I love doing, which is probably all the same as you. All the things I love doing are screen based or book based. Writing, reading, messing around on the computer. All those things I didn't have the energy or the motivation to do. So I'm feeling much better now that I've started working again.
Good. Well, just take it easy. Like when I first recovered, I was doing mornings and then would sleep in the afternoon. So I took it slow going back in, because you just that exhaustion levels keep coming back, don't they?
It is, and I've been, because I don't know if I mentioned in a tweet. You can't see it because my hair is long, but I seem to be losing my hair under.
Oh, really?
I've got a bald patch sort of under here. I'm not going to show you.
Oh.
I might do when we're off air. It's just very. I don't think it's to do with the COVID. I have heard people say that baldness is a factor in long COVID. But I don't think it's that. I think it's more to do with just possibly the stress I've been through over the last couple of years, maybe. I don't know, but I'm going to go to the doctors, but of course they won't see me at the moment because I'm still testing positive.
Oh God! Oh, you're doing well to be here. So we're so glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Oh, and I was really sad to miss the one with Phoebe Morgan.
Yeah, we missed
and you did
you.
so well. It was so lovely to listen to you do that. It sounded brilliant, really.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was a bit nerve-wracking doing it on my own, actually, but Phoebe's so lovely. What have I been up to while you've had COVID? I took a break from my word account writing to edit the opening. That's going to go off to the publisher soon, so that's exciting. And I edited and plotted, so I've now got all the scenes that's going into the book on my Scrivener down one side, so I can
Which book
just.
Is this, Lauren?
This is a new book. I can't tell you the title because it gives it all away. This is the new Lauren North, which I hope will come out in 2023.
Okay.
And my latest Lauren North thriller, All the Wicked Games, which is out in August, has had a cover reveal on Twitter and is now on NetGalley, and proofs are landing on the doorstep. So that's quite exciting as well to see people reading it and it being out in the world. So I'm looking forward to it.
Exciting, isn't it? Yes, and the cover is lovely. I've seen the cover, and
thank you. Yes,
it's fantastic.
It was the first time I got a choice. Actually, they couldn't quite decide on the colours, so I sent it to Leslie and got some views. So I sent it to Leslie. Everyone had a very different opinion, and in the end, I just went back to the publisher and said, "I can't make this decision. I'm not qualified to do so. Sales team need to make this decision."
Oh, really?
So, it's all sorted now, which is good. So.
They were both absolutely lovely. So I think whatever one they've plumped for is the best one.
Yes, well, they've gone pink. They've gone the pink one. So
they've gone for the pink.
They've gone pink. Yes, I think it's very good. Yeah,
excellent. Excellent.
And that's it.
Well, I mean, I've been, as I say, I haven't really done a great deal of work this week, so I haven't been well enough, but I did sort of start to get back into it at the weekend. And I had been struggling with plot for the second half, but then I had a really good idea. I had a particular problem that I was trying to get over, and like a plot hole, I suppose you'd call it. And I had a sort of, when you get these sort of eureka moments.
Yes.
And I had one on Sunday night, and I thought, yay! And I was so thrilled on Sunday night.
Oh, that's
But
so
then, of
good.
course, when I sat down at my desk, early on, no, was it Saturday I had that? So when I sat down to my desk on Sunday, I thought, oh my God, I've had this great idea, but now I've got to bloody well write it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's fine. It's all good, and I'm just, getting back into the swing of it, really. Now, but I think just trying to motivate myself. I mean, as we were saying earlier, the topic for today being sex in thrillers, I couldn't feel less sexy if I tried today. But it is an interesting topic, isn't it? And I know that it divides views, I think, because I know some people, I've read reviews of before where people don't like sex appearing in thrillers, and they think it's a distraction, or they don't like too much sort of romantic element or anything really. They just want the action and the pace and the thrills. I mean, personally, I don't know about you, but I like to have, I like a little bit of sex in my novels. Not too much, because I think, that can sort of blur the genre a little bit. Don't really want to be writing erotic fiction, but I think every so often a well-placed scene, if it doesn't go on too long. I mean, when my sons both read my first books, they said it was a bit embarrassing when they came to this little sex scenes, and my eldest son Jack said, "Oh well, thankfully they were mercifully short, Mum." So, we got through them quite quickly. But if anybody is interested in the rumour, page 213 is what you need to read. And who did you tell? Page 93. And the one on page 93 is my favourite, I have to say.
Oh, that's good, actually, because I've literally I was flicking through the books, like trying to find the scenes to talk about it. But it is interesting because I think prior to this weekend, I would have said I'm not necessarily a massive fan of reading sex scenes in books. I just feel like it's a bit distracting and I'd rather just gloss over it. But I beta read a friend's thriller, and it's amazing. And it was brilliant to read. And she had this amazing sexual tension that ran throughout. And then she didn't then follow it on with a sex scene. And I then said to her, oh, actually, I think it needs one because you've had all this sexual tension. So I do think actually there is a place for sex in thrillers, but I am such a prude and I don't write them myself. I used to write them in my first romances, but now I just let them get on with it. And to be fair, all my characters are just too stressed and anxious to think about it, to be honest.
Well, I think I like to give my characters just a little bit of tension release every so often, because I think we all need that, don't we?
Yeah,
but not too much. I think that's the thing. It's getting the balance right, isn't it? Not too much, just the odd little, reference perhaps, or the odd paragraph. I wouldn't want to go on for pages and pages. I want to get it over with.
Yeah, I do the kiss in all the Wicked Games, and one of my characters has sex actually. And I think I might have described the kiss and that first getting together, but I just then closed the door and left them to it.
It was quite funny actually, because when you were chatting with Phoebe the other week and you were talking about, I think the fun question was something about what's the most embarrassing or funniest editorial note you've ever had, and of course I couldn't say mine because I wasn't doing it with you, but my editor, my last editor on my first 3 books, Sarah Adams, I'd written something in the rumour, so we didn't kind of know each other terribly well because it was with my first book, with my debut, and I'd written something about there was a sex scene which is still in the rumour, but I'd give it a bit too much detail, I think, and it sounds a bit icky, but I'd had this character passing someone a tissue anyway, which I think all good gentlemen should do, pass their partner a tissue anyway. Sarah just put in the margin, she said, no, I think this is just too much. could we lose the tissue? I thought, okay.
It's
Maybe
funny,
you're
isn't
right.
it? Yeah, it's so hard to know quite what to fit in it. Actually, had a lovely lunch last week with Susie Lyons, Essie Lyons, and she teaches creative writing, and she taught a class on sex in writing, and read out some bad sex scenes, which we're actually doing later on in the show, aren't we? And she said that it's less is more, that like don't go into too much description because it then distracts from the scene, I think. So
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
but the person who is going to be able to give us some great advice and some insights into sex in thrillers is our guest today, who is Lizzy Barber, who has got Out of Her Depth coming out very soon. And she has it's a fantastic writer, isn't she? So I'm really excited to have her on the show. So welcome, Lizzy, to In Suspense.
Hello, Lizzy Barber. Welcome to In Suspense. We're delighted to have you with us today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you guys so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I don't know if are you in a kitchen there? I can see a lot of alcohol behind you, Lizzy.
I am in the kitchen. This is my desk. This is where I work. So just
great.
so happens to be at 5:30. I am well placed.
Yes, that's absolutely perfect for cocktail hour, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to read out your bio before we start grilling you. No, we won't be grilling you, don't worry. We'll just be chatting nicely. If I'm a bit croaky, forgive me, but I've got the COVID voice. So, Lizzy Barber studied English at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge University. After previous lives, acting and working in film development, she has spent the last 10 years as head of brand and marketing for the Hush Collection, a boutique group of restaurants founded by her brother Jamie. Her debut novel, My Name is Anna, is the winner of the Daily Mail First Novel Competition and was published in 2019 in the UK by Penguin Random House, by Myra HarperCollins in the US, and by Albatross in Slovakia. Her second novel, Out of Her Depth, will be published on the 28th of April, so that's this month, by Pan Macmillan in the UK and HarperCollins in the US. Her third novel, Girls Like That, will be published in 2023 by Pan Macmillan. Lizzy lives in London with her husband George, a food writer and strategy consultant, and their son Marlowe, which is a great name, by the way. I love the name Marlowe.
And it's quite on the nose. I know. So my husband and I actually met at Corpus. We started going out first week of second term of first year. And so literature has obviously always been in our history, and this is where it gets really nerdy. Christopher Marlowe was actually one of the alum of Corpus, so it kind of made sense for us as a name, and I'm a big drama nerd as well, so it fit, and he is definitely a Marlowe.
Oh, lovely.
And I've actually got a female Marlowe in my next novel. She's the main character. Yeah. I love the name. Right. Yeah. Okay. So, Out of Her Depth, I absolutely loved it. It's such a good novel. You're such a good writer. And also, I love the city of Florence, which is where it's set. And I think that sort of added to the glamour of it, really, for me, because I could really picture all the scenes. I could smell those fragrances of the Tuscan countryside. It was fabulous. And it's such evocative writing, really. I think that's what comes away from the book for me. It really assails all of your senses. But I wondered if you could tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about Out of Her Depth for the benefit of those. Well, they won't have read it yet because it's not out yet, is it?
Yeah, that's true. So as you said, it's set in Florence, in the hills above Florence, actually, in Fiesole, which is just kind of up above the city centre, which is a place that means a lot to me, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So it's a story of a young woman called Rachel who gets an incredible opportunity after she leaves school to spend the summer working in a pensione, which is a kind of effectively a bed and breakfast, but kind of on steroids, in this kind of grand Villa Medici up in the hills, run by this very glamorous Italian model. And there she meets this incredibly privileged, very, very British girl called Diana, who's also working there, and then their neighbour is a very dashing, again very English expat type fellow called Sebastian, and she kind of falls into this world which she has known nothing about. She's kind of very I would say working class Londoner, and she falls into this amazing world that she's never experienced before. And we know 20 years on that Sebastian has just been released from prison for 20 years, and it's all about finding out what kind of went wrong in this seemingly perfect summer.
Wow, yeah, that's a really good, tempting summary. And you know Florence very well. I believe you studied there, is that right?
Yes, so Italy has always been kind of intrinsic to my family summers. We've spent every year since, I mean, before I was born, so we're talking kind of 40, 50 years. So I've got a much older brother, going to this town on the coast of Tuscany. And so we've always fallen in love with the area. And my brother, 15 years before I did, actually did the same course in Florence that I did on my year out. So I studied there for 3 months, kind of studying Italian in the morning and then being let loose in the afternoon as this kind of playground of Florence and Tuscany. And then I loved it so much I went back the following year, which was when I started dating my now husband, and it became a thing that we started doing every year. We eventually got married there. We still go back to this same place in Tuscany with my family, and we always knock on Florence as well, so it's a bit like our second home now. It just means so much to me as a city. And I've always thought that it would be kind of rife for a thriller.
Definitely. It definitely comes across your love and how well you know the area. I think that really shines through in the book, and I really loved it too, Lizzy. I think it's a dual timeline, and I think it does that so brilliantly. It's always wanting to get to that next scene, and then you want to get to the next one, and it just keeps you turning the pages so brilliantly. And there's this real sense of foreboding of like what's about to go wrong in the past chapters, which I just really got under my skin, I think. Now, one of the themes which you've just touched upon is class and entitlement, and you draw on that so brilliantly in the relationship between Rachel and Diana. And obviously you went to Cambridge University, so you must have seen firsthand a lot of the extreme levels of entitlement. And I just wondered, and was this a theme that developed as the novel took shape, or was it something that you thought of as a topic that you specifically wanted to address in the thriller?
So I will start out by saying, just for kind of any pretensions, that I'm certainly not unprivileged. I'm very aware of that. I've grown up central London. I went to a very academic school, but I think that with that there is an awareness of all kind of forms of privilege. And certainly for me, one of the things I was interested that I experienced both in Florence and in Cambridge was that very specific, very British privilege. It's funny for me, having had a certain background and a certain upbringing. I'm Jewish, and I went to a school with lots of other Jewish people, and then you kind of go to somewhere like Cambridge, which has that very British side of society, and they've never heard of a Jewish person before, and suddenly all of these things that you think that you are is completely undermined. And there is just a certain echelon of society that I just find very interesting, that kind of certain levels of not just wealth, but kind of the inherent privilege that comes with being a British person. And I think, certainly for me, one of the things that I was interested in that comes across in my love of Florence is this idea of Rachel having her eyes open to this whole new world. And that's something that I really wanted to touch upon kind of from the very beginning. I was very influenced by the Talented Mr. Ripley, and Rachel is my Ripley. And so she's kind of thrown into this same sort of society that Ripley enters into when he goes to Montebello, and is kind of both. It's kind of like a desire, but also jealousy and hatred kind of coming hand in hand with each other. And they are kind of two sides of the same coin in that way, that you kind of, you hate them, but you also want to be them. And I found that really interesting to explore.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it definitely comes across like that as well.
It really does. Can you tell us, before we go on to talking about our topic today, can you tell us a little bit about your writing journey? Because you won the, as we said in the bio, you won the Penguin Random House Daily Mail first was it first novel competition, first crime novel competition. And I was wondering, how long you'd been writing before you went in for that competition. I know your first book was called My Name is Anna, wasn't it? And was that the first novel you ever wrote? Can you tell us a little bit about how it all started for you?
So I think I'm one of those just massive author cliches of one of those people who was obsessed with reading. I was always the kid who my local bookshop used to just quiver when I came in, because I'd go, I've read that before we went on holiday and come out with a massive stack of books. So I was always a huge reader. I was always incredibly creative. Always writing short stories, but growing up, my main interest was drama. Like I said earlier, I was a real drama nerd. Part of the reason for going to Cambridge, or applying to Cambridge specifically, was because of the drama that they have there. So that was always my focus, and writing was always a sideline. Then, kind of to cut a long story short, I'd been writing a few things. I went through this period when my best friend and my now husband both moved to the States for kind of long stints of time, and I suddenly had this kind of existential crisis where I thought, what am I doing with my life? And they were both gone, and so I decided to start taking a writing course in the evenings, which was the original creative writing course. It wasn't kind of the grand Faber Academy or any of the kind of City Lit classes. It was just a kind of one evening a week for a couple of hours. And I started off writing a book about, based on my grandma's life. She led a really exotic life where she grew up in Tel Aviv and then moved to Egypt and then came over to London after the Suez crisis. And it was very much literary fiction. And I was really enjoying it. And I did it for a few years, and I just kind of hit a wall with it. And then this idea for My Name is Anna sort of jumped into my head. And I've actually kind of found that with a lot of my plots, weirdly, is that they seem to kind of pounce on me. And I just kind of put the book about my grandma aside and started writing this. And then kind of completely randomly, I mean, I don't know how it worked with you, Leslie, because I know that you also entered the competition. My mum told me about it, and she knew that I was writing this book, and I'd only written the first chapter. And I just entered it because I'd entered a few things. Nothing had happened. I hadn't gone anywhere. And I just entered it and then forgot about it. But I was still writing this book because suddenly I couldn't kind of let it go. And the kind of book about my grandma was pushed to one side, and I was writing, and I wrote about 25,000 words, and then got this call out of the blue from Luigi, my agent, saying, "Hi, this is Luigi from LBA." Obviously had no idea who Luigi was, what LBA was. I thought he was a plumber. But you get random numbers on your phone. Half the time you don't even answer them, but thank God I did. And it all kind of spiraled from there. So I think I hadn't finished writing My Name is Anna when I got the contract. And then it was kind of a speedy kind of race to finishing in time for publication. And then, it's been a few years in between those two. Obviously there's been a pandemic. I had Marlo, who was born the week after My Name is Anna came out, so it's taken me a little bit longer to get to the next one out, but I think now hopefully I'm in a kind of more of a role with the following ones.
Gosh, yes, I remember that phone call from Luigi. You thought he was a plumber. I thought he was from Vodafone.
Poor Luigi.
He needs to work on his phone voice.
Oh, it's such an exciting journey that you've had. And for anyone who is currently submitting to agents, would you recommend entering a competition as a strategy, do you think, for getting noticed?
I think I would. I mean, funnily enough, a very good friend of mine, Emma Hughes, also entered the Lucy Cavendish competition. And I think that she didn't win, but actually it put her face to face with a number of agents, and she's ended up publishing. She's now writing her third book. I think, for anything, it's one of those things that I'm a very big believer in, if you don't ask, you don't try. And, if you don't enter a competition, you'll never know. Obviously, there are some, I think this one didn't come with any entry fees, and I am aware that there are entry fees for some of them. But I think even if you end up getting feedback or get shortlisted, there is no harm, particularly with competitions that don't have an entry fee, in doing, even if there's a way of kind of honing your skills or seeing if you can get any feedback from them. And yes, absolutely, it can put you in front of agents or lead to winning a competition like I did that led to publishing.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd always recommend aspiring writers to go in for as many competitions as they can, because there are lots of free ones or ones with very small entrance fees. And as you say, Lizzy, it is a way of getting your work in front of an agent, because often agents are on the judging panels, and you know that your work will definitely be read. Whereas sometimes if you send it, off to an agent, you don't always know that they're going to read it properly or that it's going to hit them on a good day. Whereas if they're judging something, they're more likely to read it, aren't they? So it certainly worked for you, and it worked for me as well. So I'd certainly recommend it as well. Now, as you know, our topic today is a bit of a saucy one, really. It's sex in thrillers. How much is too much? I told my husband we were talking about this the other day, and he said, "Oh, you can never have too much," which probably tells you all you need to know about him. But Lauren and I were chatting earlier, really, about that, and I'm kind of all for it. I think it's great to have a little bit of sex in a thriller, as long as it's not too much. Lauren's a little bit more circumspect.
Prudish?
I wouldn't say prudish, perhaps a little shyer. I don't know. We were just wondering, what's your take on it? Because there are a few racy little scenes in your book. It's not all sex, obviously. It's a jolly good, intelligent and well-written thriller, but there's a couple of scenes that are of note. So we were wondering, what's your take on it, and whether you actually enjoy reading books with sex in them?
So I didn't realise until you brought this up as a topic of conversation that all of my books have sex in them. I don't know where it's come from, but I mean, My Name is Anna had I think 2 sex scenes or slightly racy scenes, As Per Depth obviously does, and wait till you see the 3rd one. But I think with Out of Her Depth, it's so inherent to the world of that book. I mean, it's that whole kind of heady atmosphere. A lot of it is to do with sexual desire, and there's a lot of sexual politics amongst the whole group of people. I mean, there's kind of tantalizing girl crush levels of desire between Rachel and Diana. There is Diana as this kind of racy, full of life 18-year-old, and her relationship with Sebastian. There's Sebastian and Rachel. So I think it really fits with the kind of heady atmosphere of the book, which is why it didn't even really occur to me whether to include them or not in that sense, because I think that's part of where the tension in the book comes from. I'm probably the only person I know who's never read any sort of Mills and Boon. So it's not necessarily something that I kind of seek out, but I do think when they're deployed in the right way, that sex scenes are kind of useful for either creating tension or saying something that furthers the narrative or is about the characters or kind of exposes the characters in a certain way.
And obviously I won't give anything away at all, very mindful of that, but there is one particular there's one particular sex scene in your novel which is very powerful because of the after effects of it. So it's very, very well done.
And I think you're absolutely right that there is a time and a place for it, and it really, I think it has the potential to such heighten emotions in the book, and especially in your book, and that is the case. And what I loved about your book is that you had this sexual tension throughout. So it would have been quite odd, I think, not to have included the sex scene. But I did wonder, because obviously I don't write them, so I just leave my characters to it. But I wondered, like, when you get to writing a sex scene, do you write it at night with the candles burning, or is it kind of like it's 8 o'clock in the morning and I've got to write 200 words, so I'm just going to write it? Like, do you have a method?
I don't think I can't think when I wrote that particular scene. The funny thing is that I write most of my books in coffee shops because I can't stand being at home, and I can't remember sort of looking furtively around or kind of making sure that nobody knew what I was doing, kind of hiding my screen. So I don't know whether it's, I'm not a bashful person or a shy person. I'm certainly not the other end of that scale of kind of letting it all loose. So I think that it is maybe because it just was so inherent to the book, it does seem like not so much 8 o'clock in the morning, but does seem kind of part of the normal writing journey. I mean, I did a lot of acting when I was younger. I don't think I did any sex scenes, but I certainly did a lot of kind of intimate scenes. And so for me, it's kind of part of the job, I guess, of creating it. But no, not kind of going under the bedclothes in stinky lingerie while I'm writing it.
Yes, I think I remember some of your acting skills at Capital Crime, Lizzie. Do you remember when we were on that panel
Yeah.
together and you had to act out a scene from someone's book on the other
Oh
panel?
yeah. I can't remember what the scene was
It
now.
was something
Yeah,
about
I've
a
also
dog.
done
Was it
things like
something
that.
about a dog being hurt or something? I don't know. It was something. Well, we shouldn't
Yes, I
mention
definitely
that because
remember dog.
we'll
Yeah.
lose listeners. You can't mention
Yeah.
dogs being hurt. But no, it was somebody else's novel. It wasn't one of ours.
No
But no,
dogs in my books. Sex but no dogs.
sex but no dogs. Yes, moving swiftly on. What do you think? Oh, is it my turn? Is it my
Yeah,
turn?
no, it's your turn. Yeah.
What do you think are some of the, well, are there advantages or disadvantages for including too much sex in thrillers, do you think? Because I know, someone
Well,
like Colleen Hoover has written some
Mm.
very sexy thrillers and they're doing incredibly well
Yeah,
at
they
the
are.
moment. And I don't know if you've read any, Lizzie, but her most recent, I think it was called Verity.
Verity, yes.
I mean,
I
there are
haven't read
things in
Verity. I have
that.
heard a lot about it.
There are scenes
Mm.
in that are sort of akin to 50 Shades, really.
I was going to bring up 50 Shades actually. I think if there's kind of a 50 Shades, I suppose in a way, 50 Shades is a kind of has a thrilling aspect to it. I suppose if you think of thrillers as being thrilling, then there's definitely all for it, kind of that sexual tension, kind of heightening things. And I suppose then if you go back and think of kind of origins of thrillers and think about kind of gothic novels and gothic thrillers, I mean, if you think about Wuthering Heights, which is one of my favorite books of all time, that is kind of rife with sexual tension. And obviously I don't think that the Brontes, particularly given their puritanical background anyway, were going to be writing any bodice rippers, but that is certainly, I mean, that kind of the moors and the kind of windswept landscape definitely builds towards that sexual tension between Cathy and Heathcliff. So I think that there's definitely a place for them. I suppose too much is when it doesn't serve the plot. So, a gratuitous sex scene for the sake of kind of just shoving a chance to have people going at it means that there's no point. But I think that if there's that whole kind of Freudian sex and death drive kind of having an effect on thrillers, and I think if it does serve the plot and it's moving the action along, then stick as many in as you like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the risk is that you could have too much and then you could detract from the storyline, couldn't you? So I think it has to be balanced and it has to feel natural. Can you see, Lizzie, sexy thrillers becoming like their own subset of a genre, do you think? And what advice would you give to anyone considering adding a sex scene to their books?
So can I see them becoming a genre? I mean, if you think that domestic noir has become a genre, maybe this is the kind of natural next step in that line. So I don't see why they couldn't. I mean, again, 50 Shades. You take 50 Shades, you take domestic thrillers, and you bonk them together.
Yeah,
you got that good choice of word there.
Bonk
them together.
So I mean, yeah, I think that obviously the industry is, as we all know, being writers in it, the industry is very saturated. So if there is a way of kind of looking at it from a different angle, then I'd be all for it. I think in terms of advice, it's a difficult one. I definitely think kind of it's about having just enough in there. And again, I would go back to this point that it's about it serving the plot. I mean, the sex scenes in Out of Her Depth absolutely are kind of inherent Monday morning, inherent to the narrative. And I think that, as you said, Lauren, without them, it would kind of, that tension would dissipate. So I think it's about using them sparingly and using this scene sparingly. I think that there's a fine line between kind of getting all Mills and Boon and discussing every single detail, but also kind of, and then they ... which feels deeply unsatisfying to the reader as well. So it is a really tricky balance. I suppose it's finding scenes in books that you like and that appeal to you. And I suppose with every kind of, as with everything with being a writer, a lot of it is kind of using other people's work and mapping it and seeing kind of how it works and why that creates a certain effect in you, and then trying to recreate that yourself. I certainly don't have kind of gratuitous or kind of very visual sex in my books.
No, certainly not.
No. No, and of course, your book it's so much more than that. I mean, I would highly recommend it to our listeners because it's, as I said, for all those reasons, it's very evocative, and you can really you can really picture it. And you mentioned Patricia Highsmith, and I think your writing's been likened to hers as well, which is a very high accolade indeed.
I will certainly not shy away from that. I'd be delighted to be likened to Patricia Highsmith. She's wonderful.
Absolutely, yes. What we are going to do now is a little bit naughty. We're not going to talk about sex the whole time. We will come on to something else in a minute. But we are going to read out, Lauren and I, a few lines from the most recent, is it the literary review Bad Sex Book Award?
In Fiction Awards. Yes, this is 2019. There was a joint winners.
Okay, I've heard of this.
So we've each.
I hope mine won't be entered in it.
We've each got a sentence to read. I think it's become a bit de rigueur, hasn't it, to read out some sex awards on podcasts. So anyway, mine is. I'm going to start now. Right, let me get ready. Let me prepare myself.
Put your sex voice on, Leslie.
Now, by the way, if anyone has any small children in the room listening to this, you might want to pause and chivvy them out of the room and get them involved in some craft materials or something, and then come back to us. Okay. Katsuru moaned as a bulge formed beneath the material of his kimono, a bulge that Mayuki seized, kneaded, massaged, squashed, and crushed. Apologies to all the gentlemen who may be listening, who have probably all crossed their legs and gone, ooh!
Hard to see quite, the niceness in that one. And my one's completely different, actually. More than torrid, more than tropical. These two were riding the equator. They embraced as if with violent holding they could weld the two of them one.
Oh.
So, like, what was that?
What?
I mean, you guys should just start doing audio narratives. Sex
Do you know,
that's great.
That could be a lucrative little side hustle, couldn't it, Lauren? Doing an erotic fiction narrative podcast.
I'm not sure.
Yes. Well, we'll have a chat about that later.
So it's interesting in what goes wrong in both those examples. And I think in one of them, you've got the one, Leslie, you read out, it was very much just too much and too visual, really, I think. And I don't think he was really, or she was really thinking about what the hand was doing. And then the one I read out, it's like, well, what is that? It was too symbolic. It wasn't enough of anything. So interesting how you can get it wrong on so many levels. It's not just about is a throbbing member too far, isn't it? What do you think, Lizzie? Where do you draw the line, do you think, in describing the act?
Well, I think it does come back to that middle point. I mean, certainly kind of metaphors of crashing waves and sunsets are just going to get people groaning and rolling their eyes. And similarly, if I ever write about somebody needing somebody's member, you can shoot me on sight. It's just I think what I've also noticed, both in My Name is Anna and in Out of Her Depth, again, without giving too many spoilers away, is both of those books have kind of bad sex scenes, as in not they're written badly, but about sex which is disappointing. In Out of Her Depth, again, without revealing anything, that you kind of are driven through the narrative to kind of wait for this sex scene, and then it actually comes up as a crushing disappointment. And I think that's a way of showing sex as well, in a different light, that it's not kind of, it doesn't have to be this, like in the one that Lauren read, this hugely romantic thing, or something in Leslie's one, which is kind of almost like some bad literotica. So I think it's maybe a delicate hand and realistic without being kind of photorealistic.
I think you're right. I think that's a good balance, isn't it?
The photorealistic, yes, it sort of smacks of soft porn, which is not kind of. And when you said Leslie's one, just to make it clear, I didn't write it. It wasn't me.
I did dig out. This was the first book I ever wrote. It was called The Reluctant Celebrity, back many years ago, and I did dig it out just between when Leslie and I did the recording and and this interview to see if I could find. I know I wrote a sex scene in that, but I couldn't find it. Don't know where I put it in the book. Like, but I was like going through the pages trying to find it, but it was just so poorly written. I was like, quick, just move on. So
yeah, because you started out writing romances, didn't you?
Yes, I do still write them. Yes,
write
but yeah. So, but then moved on to the darker side of things as life took over. I think. Yes. Right. Well, I think we're going to move on now, aren't we? From
yes, I think
sex,
we'll put sex to one side for the moment.
Yes. So let's talk, Lizzy. What's next for you? Because in your bio, we mentioned Girls Like That, which is your book that's coming out in 2023, and I just have to say I love that title so much.
Thank you.
Are you allowed to tell us anything about it, or is it too soon?
No, I think I can tell you about it. I am hoping to get the structural edits in on a Friday. Wayne, if you're listening, they are coming on Friday. Actually, I'll hopefully already had them. So it is set in Cornwall this time. I think basically all of my books are just set on places I like to go on holiday.
It's lovely though.
So this one, I mean, if Out of Her Depth was inspired by Patricia Highsmith, this is very much inspired by Daphne du Maurier, and it's got much more of a gothic tone to it. It is about a girl called Lily who escapes London and violent relationship to get a job in the furthest place she can think of, which is Cornwall, where she becomes a nanny for a very wealthy, sophisticated couple called Charles and Laurie Rowe and their 2 children. And it's this kind of big mansion set on the cliffs above the beaches of Cornwall, and it's all about how she becomes embroiled in their relationship and the kind of dark secrets that underpin it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, that sounds
the first linear book I've written as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's exciting. Yeah, did you find it different to write then if you weren't hopping back and forth?
I found it harder. I mean, the next one is also going to be dual timeline, so I think I find it just much easier to jump around and have different voices. But yeah, it was quite satisfying writing scenes where it was kind of, the chapter ends and then the next chapter begins in the next moment, rather than kind of different timelines or dual voices, which My Name is Anna was. So I'm really excited by it. It was actually a bit of a torment to write, to be honest with you, but and it has been that way literally until last Friday when I had one of those kind of light bulb moments that the plot going on. So I'm now really excited about it, and it is out in 2023.
So exciting. And that actually leads us on to our next question, which is a bit of a follow-up, which is obviously Out of Your Depth, your second. As you said, you're doing structural edits for your third. So I wondered, how has your writing process evolved since writing your debut? I mean, do you tackle plotting and writing in the same way as you did, or have you changed your processes?
So on a time basis, I've ended up writing 3 different books in 3 different ways. So My Name is Anna was before Marlowe was born. I was working full time. So in some ways, my non-work time was completely my own. So I would write in my lunch break, after work. People still find this very odd, but I wrote a huge chunk of My Name is Anna on my notes on my phone on my commute to work.
Wow.
I just found it really easy to kind of, because when something's in your head, you want to get it down then and there. And so I put it on my notes, and then I could chuck that into a Word doc when I got back, and then could edit it. So that was kind of, evenings, weekends, all around working full time. Then I'd written kind of the beginning of Out of Her Depth before Marlowe was born, and then attempted to write most of it on mat leave, which is a joke, because it is certainly not a holiday, as anybody who has had children will agree with. So that was a real struggle, and that was in any spare time I could get. My husband coming home from work, grabbing Marlowe for an hour and letting me just write upstairs. I went back to work part-time quite quickly, so I was 3 days a week, and then had Marlowe for 2 days. And then my time has slowly come back around again. So now actually with A Girl Like That, it was 1 day a week, which half killed me, because it was just like that one day, because I had Marlowe on a Friday and I was working Monday to Wednesday. That Thursday was also when all of your other life admin has to take place as well. So anything else I wanted to do had to be done that Thursday, and writing went around that. Now he's in nursery full time. My new working method is Thursdays and Fridays, and that is completely on writing and anything else around it. But I'm afraid I'm a real pantser. I'm not a plotter at all. I'm trying to get better. I think one of the advantages to writing and then having to leave it is that I think I carry the books around with me throughout the week, so I'm constantly thinking about them. I do quite a lot of running as well, and I find if I'm going on a long run, I live in Islington, I spend a lot of time running on the canal. If you've ever seen like a really small, very red-faced, sweaty person on the canal, it's me talking to themselves probably. I kind of will kind of run things through in my head and be thinking about them, but apart from that, I don't really plan at all. I really admire Gillian McAllister, who has this kind of I think it's her legal brain. She writes Excel sheets, and people who have like post-it notes and write character bios. I will write an outline that I send through to my agent to approve, and then I basically sit at chapter 1 and then go. And sometimes, obviously, I'll have scenes in my head. I've started using Scrivener for the first time. Do either of you use Scrivener?
I'm the Scrivener queen. I love it.
Yeah. So I used it for the first time for a girl like that. And it is really helpful if you just have a scene that you need to chuck somewhere rather than scrolling endlessly through words. So that's about as far as I get. I will try and get better just to save my time. And I'm trying to get into this kind of this golden timeline that every thriller writer seems to wants to do. I don't know about you guys, but of this kind of book a year format. And I know that I probably have to be more organized to do that. But I think part of the joy of writing for me is this kind of creative bubble that you live in. And I'm one of those people, it sounds really, I don't know, sometimes I think it sounds really wanky. Am I allowed to say wanky?
You are. You've just said it.
We have read sex scenes out so far today, so I think wanky's all right.
The word wank was not used, but I think it sounds really, but I'm one of those that, a lot of writers talk about like their characters doing different things to what they wanted them to, and I do really honestly believe that characters have a mind of their own, or scenes go different ways. And so I just feel like if I plotted too rigidly, I would then be kind of constrained by it and get to a stage where I'd have to kind of throw that out anyway. So I'm a free spirit.
I think that's interesting though, because a lot of people they listen to certain rules or things that lots of writers say, because lots of writers do say, you must write every day and get work and blah, blah, blah. And all those things are all well and good, and they may well work very well for them, but they don't work for everybody. No. As you say, you work on specific days, and for a lot of people that is the only way they can do it. And I think if it works for you, then it works for you. And as you go through life and your circumstances and working arrangements change, then your writing process will change as well. And we just have to go with the flow.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But what are you reading at the moment, Lizzy? Have you got anything on your TBR pile or something you've just read?
So I'm currently reading 3 books simultaneously, and then I'm going away on Friday, and I've just bought Charlotte Duckworth's The Sanctuary, which I'm really
I loved
about.
it.
I think she's brilliant. Lizzie, she built your website, didn't she?
Yes, she
built mine as well.
She's so talented.
She's so great. She's so talented. I'm really excited about that. But then I'm also reading, I've just started reading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is Taylor Jenkins Reid's book. I've only read Malibu Rising. I haven't read Daisy and the Six, but I've just started and I'm loving it. And then I'm reading some nonfiction, which I'm very bad at. So I'm also reading a book called Fair Play, which, given our conversations about kind of time management, is about just basically how to deal with day-to-day life in a better way. And I'm also reading a book which is really interesting, called Cultish, which is by an American writer called Amanda Monsell. And it is about kind of the language of cults. And when I say cults, I mean sort of every form of kind of, Children of God. I'm a bit obsessed with cults. Children of God, Manson family, to kind of modern day multi-level marketing, Scientology. The kind of inspiration for this is that my next book is going to feature some modern day cult. So it's a really interesting read to anybody who's interested in linguistics as much as in cults, which are very interesting. Both of them very interesting to me.
Yeah,
so I've got a bit of a roster. Got my work cut out for me for the next few weeks.
And what about you, Laurie? What are you reading at the moment?
I am reading a book called The Feud by Gemma Rogers, which is just brilliant, and that's coming out in May. I've never read any of her books before, but I certainly will now. It is very empowering and very twisty, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'm sort of halfway through now. Can't wait to finish. What about you, Leslie?
Well, I've just finished Holly Seddon's latest. Annoyingly, I've left it downstairs. I would
Oh,
have
yes.
held it up, but it's called The Woman on the Bridge. And I think it's out. It's out in ebook, an audiobook
Oh,
now. And
yes.
I think the paperback is coming out in July, I think.
Yes. Because I have got a book coming of it, but I've also just put it on my Audible to listen to now. So I'm excited to start.
It's really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I've also just started the latest Adam Hamdy, which is The
Oh,
Other Side of Night. And this is a slight departure for Adam. It's a sort of Matt Haig meets Audrey Niffenegger. So I think that will give you some indication.
It looks
And
quite Matt Haig, the cover.
it does. It's a lovely cover. I think this is the. I don't know if this is the proof cover because it's coming out in September 2022.
oh, right.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if this will be the final cover. Possibly not. Possibly this is, but I don't know. It's a lovely cover anyway.
Yeah.
And it's really different, and it's really. I love Adam Hamdy's writing, so I've read quite a few of his now, and that's really good. And I've also been sent. This Tess Gerritsen, Listen to Me. It's the Rizzoli and Isles thriller, and I love Tess Gerritsen's writing. Really
I've never
exciting,
read any of her.
pacey. She's
Good.
written,
That's
and
really good.
I think there's a TV series as well. It's been on for a while. But it's So that's another great one, and that came with some little earphones. So
Oh, cool.
very cool.
Very cool. Oh, well, sadly, that is all we've got time for today. Thank you so much, Lizzy, for coming on the show and talking to us about Out of Her Depth, which is here in my hands, and it's out on the 28th of April. So do grab a copy, as it is a very cracking thriller.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being on the show. Thank you very much.
And we're back with the first of our minisodes on editing next week with the wonderful Phoebe Morgan, who was a guest on our last show, and she's doing a series of minisodes for us on various aspects of the editing process. So that is going to be really interesting. Can't wait to do those with her. But for now, I'm afraid it's goodbye from Lizzy, it's goodbye from Lauren, and it's goodbye from me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.